Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello and welcome to James Bond Radio, episode number 147. My name is Tom Sears and I'm joined by my brother from another Bondian mother, Mr. Chris Wright. Say hello, Chris!
Hello, Chris!
Very nice. How are you today, man? Tell me firstly how you're doing, and then I want you tell me how excited you are to hear the listener reviews about Goldeneye.
Okay, so firstly, I'm doing rather well. I've been a busy bee with the old podcast recently. I've been listening to all the listener reviews, funnily enough, going through them all. It's got me excited. But it's a hard work sometimes, Tom, when you get like thousands upon thousands upon thousands are coming. So I needed to go for a little run this morning, and it's been weird today. I know us British talk about the weather quite a lot, but like yesterday and all last night, it was hammering it down. It's like torrential, and suddenly, like the clouds lifted, and I'm currently got blue sky and sunshine.
I was
and
just
it's like
going to say,
November, man.
I can see it shining through the window onto your face there. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, it's actually a location film light, just to
very nice.
Yeah, but still,
turning pro 147 episodes in. I like it.
This is it.
Very nice.
Yeah. But looking forward to the reviews. What about you?
Yeah, me too. I was going to say, if you've gone through them all so far, like what would you say? Like, are we looking? What are we in store for today? Are we looking for a bit of a mix? Is there a lot of negativity, a lot of positivity? What's the general feeling? Would you say?
I don't want to go into too much detail. I'll say it's definitely not the same feelings across the board. So there are differences, which is obviously what we want. I guess I would definitely say the majority are leaning towards the positive, but there are a few sort of uncertainties in there as well, should we say.
All right. Very nice indeed. Good stuff. I suppose that's to be expected, isn't it, at this stage of the game?
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed. Definitely is.
All righty-ho then. So before we turn it over to the listeners, we've got some business to take care of, which is obviously come and follow us on the social medias. Come onto Facebook, put James Bond Radio into the search, you'll find us. Come and get us on Twitter at James Bond Radio. Come and get us on Instagram, which is James Bond Podcast over on Instagram. So that one's a bit different, but come and follow along there. Brian Dobson just last week posted a particularly fetching photograph of Olga Korolenko, which I was very grateful for. If that's not enough to get you signing up for the old Instagram, I don't know what is. Head on over to jamesbondradio.com where you can see all of our posts and some of the occasional blog posts and stuff like that. You can also leave a voicemail. Most of the people listening today probably already know that because they've left a voicemail for today's episode. You just click the send voicemail button on the far right. If you've got any trivia questions, or you just want to say hello, or you have anything in particular you want to chat about, obviously we've got an upcoming MI6 mailbag episode coming up next week. So if you've got any questions for that, you can send that in. And what else have we got? The iTunes page. Come to iTunes. Even if you don't use iTunes, it's always helpful for us because that's where most people listen to their podcasts. So if you could go on iTunes and leave us a lovely glowing 5-star review, that helps us rank higher in the searches and attract more listeners, which is wonderful, isn't it? As long as they're nice listeners, that's the main thing.
As long as they're nice listeners, yeah. Do we get any non-nice listeners? I don't know. It's hard to tell if they're listening and we're not.
Yeah.
We've been put out the material already.
If you're a not very nice listener, we'd like to hear from you. Leave us a voicemail. Tom and Chris, you're both a pair of nuts. Anyway, yes, I think that's about it. Obviously, there's the donate link over on the website as well if you want to help keep the good ship JBR afloat. Go on.
Equally, on terms of the donating, I know we mentioned this before on one of the previous podcasts, but some of the JBR Elite are going to be doing the Skyfall Broadgate Challenge at the end of November. So I think there's 7, possibly 8 of us who will be running, walking, crawling in any way we can up all 35 floors of Broadgate Tower, which featured in Skyfall. So we're doing this for charity in aid of UNICEF, and even the Sir Roger Moore Legacy Twitter page promoted it as well. So that was really nice of them the other day.
Nice.
So if anyone wants to pledge, bless your hearts, all you have to do is Google James Bond Radio Just Giving and look for the Broadgate Tower Challenge, and you will see us there.
And if you want to visit Chris in his little love temple out in the desert, you can just go and knock on his door. You must bring large donations, though, obviously, for UNICEF.
Yeah.
And
or
Chris may invite you back into his private chambers. You never know if you're lucky.
You just have to ring the special phone number, which is 555 LOVE, and I'll be there.
There it is. Beautiful stuff. Good stuff. Before we get cracking, obviously, big shout out to Jack Lugo last week for his interview about the comics of Bond, the new James Bond 007 series with Greg Pak. That was a nice, interesting listen. So nice one, Jack, for stepping in for us last time.
Definitely. Cheers.
Now,
Jack.
Speaking of Jacks, we have a listener trivia question from one Mr. Jack Scorer this week, don't we?
We do, but before we go to listener questions, there's just one thing I wanted to delve into quickly. The 5th of April, Tom.
Yes.
Why is that a special date to you?
For me personally, it's my birthday. I will be turning...
Well.
How old am I going to be? 37 next April.
37?
I'm knocking on, mate.
When you're 37, do you think to yourself, now, if I was this Bond actor, and this Bond actor, when they were 37, what were they doing? What film were they in? And ultimately, what did they look like at 37 compared to what I look like or you look like at 37 or whatever?
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
is kind of what you do on your birthday,
the thing is, the only one I've been able to do, I have a yearly tradition where I post on my Facebook page of what age Connery was during what film. Because the only ones I've been able to do so far is obviously Lazenby and Connery, because in my mid-30s, all the other dudes were 40 and above when they started. So that's going to start to get worrying, isn't it? When you get into the upper realms of Roger's tenure, you're going to be like, "Fucking hell, man, this is getting on now." Shit. But so far, I believe if I remember right, Connery was 36 in You Only Live Twice, or immediately after You Only Live Twice. So I'm just over the hill a little bit. Like, I'm not quite as cool as I used to be, but I'm still hanging in there a little bit.
Yeah, I think you got less of a paunch than Connery and You Only Live Twice.
Let's hope so. You haven't seen me in the flesh in a while.
Well, actually, that's true. Lift up your shirt, Tom. No. Okay. So basically, the other reason I wanted to bring up the 5th of April was, obviously, we know it is Cubby Broccoli's birthday, the 5th of April, the day he was born. And something else I find, whenever I see a date, obviously for mine, my birthday, 15th of July, whenever I see that and it's something to do in the Bond world, I kind of like it, I'm like, yeah, that's good. It was on my birthday. So I did a little bit of research into the 5th of April. Now, would you like to know what Bond-related activities happened on the 5th of April, Tom?
Absolutely not. No interest at all.
Okay.
Of course.
Right. On to the listener trivia then. So here we go. Okay. So on the 5th of April, 1954, which also happens to be my dear mother's birth date.
Very nice.
It was the release of the novel Live and Let Die. So that was the day of the year that Live and Let Die was released.
Cool.
Obviously a good one.
That's a good one, yeah.
In fact, 1 year later to the day, on the 5th of April, 1955, that was the release of the Moonraker novel.
Very nice. So also a cracker.
Two absolute belter novels. Now, on to the films. Diamonds Are Forever, Tom. The film Diamonds Are Forever, principal photography, started on the 5th of April, 1971.
That pleases me. I like that.
Now, we also know the thing that with Harry and Cubby, towards the end of their sort of a partnership, shall we say, they each kind of took a Bond film, took the range of being the main producer in the Bond film. So obviously Cubby's was Diamonds and Man with a Golden Gun. Harry's was Live and Let Die. But obviously Cubby, first day of the film, Diamonds, it was his film. That must have been quite a cool day, I think. Do you think they had a good little celebration after the end of the first day of principal photography?
Do you know what would be interesting about that was to interview the different actors who came back regularly for those films and talk to them about the experience of working under Cubby versus Harry and just see what that experience was like. Because that's interesting, man. Can you imagine? You imagine one day if the podcast gets like that and we have to do separate episodes just to get through,
I know. Well, you do hear stories of people, obviously in individual films, who say, "Oh yeah, Cubby was on set all the time. I didn't see Harry once," or vice versa. If it was like Live and Let Die, hardly saw Cubby. So it is interesting that it ended up sort of going down that avenue, and it's like a rocky relationship, isn't it, Tom? If you're not wanting to be in the same room together, ultimately that's not going to end well, is it?
Yeah, completely.
And as was the case, I guess, with Cubby and Harry. But there we are, a few little tidbits for the 5th of April, which I thought you might want to know about.
Very nice. And also it's your mum's birthday, isn't it? Which means it's even extra special.
It is indeed, yeah. Indeed. Absolutely
Very nice.
lovely. Okay, then. Shall we go on to our listener trivia then?
Let's do it, my man.
This is from Mr. Jack Scorer.
Hello, Tom and Chris. This is Jack Scorer, and I have a trivia question for you today. In which 2 James Bond movies is the quote, "Once we were like brothers," said in? I repeat, in which 2 Bond movies is the quote, "Once we were like brothers," in? Keep up the good work, and thank you.
Very nice. Jack is clearly one of our younger listeners there. We need to clean up our act, don't we, evidently? Because we say some naughty words quite often. So I suppose maybe we need to behave ourselves a bit.
I think so. But that is a great quiz, great question, though. Great trivia there, Jack.
It was.
So I believe it might have come up in a previous podcast at one point, because it is ringing bells for me, I must say. What about you?
It's ringing bells, and I think I know this one. So nice one, Jack Scorer. Jack Scorer, like we often say about Jack Lugo. Jack Lugo has a name who sounds like an old school character in a detective noir thriller, doesn't he? Do you know what I mean? He sounds like a detective. And Jack Scorer also sounds like something along those lines. Jack Scorer to me sounds more like he'd be one with the ladies. Let's be sure. Let's be certain about that.
He scores well.
Indeed. And he would be, I don't know, some kind of crack detective as well, I think. Something like that, you know.
Either that or a world-class footballer.
Yeah, or that, yeah.
And then a detective in the nighttime or whatever. Mixes it between
I want
the
to
two.
read that story. That sounds good. All right, coolio. Yeah. So we will find out the answer from Jack towards the end of today's episode. So would you say it's time to turn it over to the JBR family so they can have their say about Goldeneye, Chris?
I certainly would. So here are the 90-second reviews for Goldeneye.
My name's Bond. James Bond. Bond. James. Bond, what do you think you're doing? Keeping the British hand up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Pussy. As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Hi, this is Adam from London leaving my Goldeneye review. This is my favourite Bond film by far. It's an incredible film. It's got amazing action sequences. It's got probably the best cast overall and an incredible debut performance from Pierce. He just completely makes the character his own. And as people say, he is the best blend of Roger and Sean. And he just completely makes the role his own. The actual film is never boring. It just flows at such a great pace. It's got comedy, it's got drama, and it's got some of the best action sequences in the entire series. I think the fight sequence at the end is such an underrated performance. Him and Alec have great chemistry, and it's such a brutal fight scene for the 90s. And I know not everyone likes the score, but I actually think it makes it sound just really different, and it sets the film apart. Some of it is a bit dodgy, but I think it just sounds, bits of it sound really cool, and it is dated for the 90s, but I kind of think in a good way, where it's just specific to the sound of that time. And I just definitely think that this film doesn't get enough credit for saving the series, and just, you know, we wouldn't be where we are now as it being one of the most successful franchises in the world without the amazing performance that Pierce gave and just the whole film itself.
Hi there, this is my Goldeneye review. I'm a big fan of Goldeneye. I flip-flop between that and Tomorrow Never Dies as my favourite Pierce Brosnan film. But I think Goldeneye has the right blend of bringing it back almost as a complete reboot, really, as other than a vague mention to the previous M. It's almost as if they sort of eradicate a lot of the previous history. There's no Felix Leiter, you've got Jack Wade instead, that kind of thing, which I think was a kind of a shrewd move to do in the mid-90s. Big fan of the film. It's got a real wit, self-awareness as well, but takes itself seriously enough to work. I really like the scene with Robbie Coltrane and Bond. I think Robbie Coltrane in Goldeneye in particular has a really good blend of menacing enough, but kind of played self-aware enough as well to have that sense of humour. Whereas I think when he's in the world is not enough. He's kind of a little bit ridiculous. So yeah, big fan of that. All the supporting characters are all really well cast, really well played. A few people have got issues with the music. I don't mind it quite as much. Run, Shoot and Hide and a few other tunes I think work quite well. And if anything, the sort of the offbeat music kind of, for me, adds to the atmosphere. So yeah, great stunts, really solid performance from our man Pierce. And yeah, really.
This is a 90-second review of Goldeneye. After my most recent viewing, I have to say that Goldeneye is unequivocally my favorite James Bond film. I think it's the best film in the series. Everything about it is top notch. When you look from Pierce Brosnan, he looks great. His lines are great. The dialogue is fantastic in this film. One of the most memorable henchmen, I would say, behind Jaws and Oddjob, Xenia Onatopp is right there. I think she's fantastic. The villains are great. The action is probably some of the best action scenes in the whole series, with that tank chase and all, the gun shootout and all that is just spectacular. And then the whole end sequence, I think, is fantastic. Some of the other great characters like Zukovsky, the new M, everything is great. Q scenes, and I think that the score is actually underrated. It's actually one of my. There's a lot I really like about Eric Serra's score. Although I will say that the only thing I don't like about this movie is the horrible song over the end credits. I would have much preferred the Goldeneye trailer music, but apart from that, this is about as perfect a Bond film as you can get. Absolutely love it.
Hey guys, it's Barry Leslie from the Facebook group. I'm phoning just to give you my 90-second review of Goldeneye. Basically, this is without doubt in amongst my top 3 James Bond films. I have really, really special memories of actually going to see this film because it was the first James Bond film that I saw as an adult at the cinema, because I'd previously only seen For Your Eyes Only, Moonraker, and The Spy Who Loved Me when I was quite young. So, I was 20 years old when Goldeneye came out, and I have to say it was one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. We sat through Goldeneye and the crowd cheered, clapped and whooped the way through the whole film, and it was absolutely brilliant, and it left a very indelible mark on me, and I just think it's a absolutely fantastic film. I think the story is fantastic, the clothes look great, big step up from License to Kill. The soundtrack is it's questionable, but it's iconic because of the game, and without a doubt, I think Goldeneye, the song, is one of my favorite James Bond themes ever. So yeah, brilliant film, and I absolutely love it. And thank you so much for doing such a thorough and amazing review of it. Thank you.
Hey guys, this is Ben Esslinger from Station D in Denver, Colorado, with my 90-second review of Goldeneye. So first of all, great movie. I absolutely love it. It is seventh in the rankings of all time for me, of all the Bond movies. I would rank it right around 007. However, I will say that it is my second favorite Bond movie just to watch, just from a enjoyment standpoint. And it's obviously Pierce's best. The pre-title sequence is off the chart good. Again, probably ranks in the top 5 pre-title sequences. The music in the pre-title section is really good, contrary to the rest of the film. Subtle, low enough to highlight the running along the top of the bridge, such a perfect beginning. And then everything after that really works for me. Obviously, the score is terrible overall, which is actually what kind of ruined Spectre for me. But thankfully, in this movie, the writing, acting, and direction overcame it. There are tons of great lines in this movie, which all help tackle whether Bond is relevant anymore. No small talk, no chit-chat, stuff like that. I love it. Aside from the score, my only other criticism is that moment when Bond and Natalia get shot at while they're flying over this secret satellite dish, but the rest of the movie is so good that who cares? So anyway, that's my quick review. Love the show, guys. Keep up all the good work. Bye.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Tom. This is Brett calling from Hamburg with my Goldeneye review. It isn't one of my favorite Bond films, but I'll start with the positive. I love the pre-title sequence. I think it's one of the best in the series. The title song from Tina Turner and the title sequence from Daniel Kleinman are both amazing. Absolute templates for what those should be. And the final fight with Trevelyan is also a standout in the series. Much of what comes in between, though, for me is I just find kind of boring. A lot of time is spent with Natalia for some reason, and she's a great character, but so much time spent away from Bond doesn't really work for me. The tank chase is not a terrible sequence by any means, but if you tell me Bond's going to drive a tank through St. Petersburg, I just expect more than what we get. You get a real backlot feel from how it's shot. Brosnan himself, I think he gets a lot better in the future films, but here he might be self-conscious, I'm not sure, but he doesn't seem to be playing Bond, but rather he's playing a guy who's playing James Bond. You feel like it's the generic ideas of the popular audience, what they think James Bond is supposed to be, and it really is a little flat for me here. But anyway, that's my thoughts. Keep up the good work. Love the show. Bye.
6 years seemed like such a long, long wait. And then, in November 1995, I went out and bought the CD soundtrack to Goldeneye. Well, I straight away had mixed feelings about it. Although I loved the title track and the Goldeneye overture, I thought the rest of it was iffy, to say the least. But then I saw the film, and boy oh boy, Brosnan was Bond from the outset. It's stylish, it's slick, it's polished. Clearly the production values have been raised, a bit like from The Man with the Golden Gun to The Spy Who Loved Me. Although I actually thought, overall, it was a slight backward step from the predecessor of License to Kill. Although I appreciate I might be in the minority on that one. So what's good about it? Well, the shiny CGI gun barrel, the pre-title sequence, the bungee jump, Daniel Kleinman's titles, the DB5, Xenia, Natalia, Pierce, Samantha Bond's Moneypenny, Judi Dench's M, my personal favourite Tanner, Michael Kitchen. Oh, there's so much of this film I really, really love. I definitely think this is Pierce's finest moment as Bond. What's not so good? Eric Serra, no Timothy Dalton. The name's Dobson, Brian Dobson. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.
This is Bruce, Station D, the desolate wasteland of North America. Goldeneye is a fantastic film and is my second favorite Bond movie. The 6 years in the early 90s without Bond was interminable, and I was very wary of the addition of Pierce Brosnan, but those concerns quickly disappeared with his charismatic performance, and he became my second favorite Bond. I loved Sean Bean's Alec Trevelyan. A rogue 00 agent could so easily have gone sideways, but Bean made it work. Famke Janssen seemed to enjoy her performance more than I did, and Isabella Scorupco never fell into damsel in distress like so many seemingly capable Bond girls of the earlier films. Judi Dench sunk her teeth into M, making quite a mark on the franchise long term. Martin Campbell put the entire thing together almost flawlessly, and for me, Goldeneye is his best movie. Shortly after Goldeneye's release on home video, I purchased the Laserdisc, and it might have well been on repeat for months. My then 3-year-old daughter was mesmerized by it and often chose to watch Goldeneye over a Disney animated movie. A few of the special effects, like the satellite dishes rise from the water, are a bit weak, but overall it holds up exceptionally well. I think we are all well aware of the substandard quality of the Blu-ray, which is the only negative I can offer about this movie.
Hi Tom and Chris, this is Chris here from Station A Australia, calling with my Goldeneye movie review. I'm a first time caller but long time listener all the way from episode 1, so keep up the great work on the podcast, it's fantastic. Goldeneye for me is one of the classic James Bond movies, has all the elements that make a good movie, make a good Bond movie. It has so many classic scenes with the new M, introducing the new M and Pierce Brosnan's interpretation of the Bond character. It really shines and it's a really good movie. For me, it's extra special. It was the very first Bond movie I saw in the cinema at the age of 13, after watching and rewatching many VHS tapes of Sean Connery and Roger Moore. So he's my Bond. He's the very first Bond that I ever saw in the cinema on Boxing Day in 1995 with my dad. So some good memories there. That might bias the film, but no, it's a really good film for me. Anyway, keep up the good work, and see you later. Thanks.
Hey mates, this is Colin, calling from Station C in chilly, cold Chicago. Here to leave my review for Goldeneye. Absolutely, positively love this movie. Love it, love it, love it. The dialogue, the lines. Biatch! Yes! I am invincible! And of course, who could forget? For England, James? No. For me. Love it so much! But number one reason I love this movie is because prior to seeing it, I had no idea there was a James Bond franchise. No clue about any previous movie, any previous history. And after seeing it, I went over to one of my friend's houses, and his dad had the entire collection on VHS. And I just fell to my knees in front of the holy grail of James Bond and proceeded to watch every single movie over and over and over. So thank you, Goldeneye, for exposing me to the world of James Bond.
Hey, this is Dalton from Phoenix. This time when I watched Goldeneye, I didn't like it as much as I usually do, and I think I sort of put it on a pedestal in my mind is the problem, because it's still really good. Eric Serra doesn't really bother me so much. I like that. I like when you get the really unique Bond soundtracks. Now, some songs definitely aren't as good. I think it's a little sappy, the casino scenes. It's like, it's a little sappy song for what's going on. But Ladies First, I think, is fun and unique, and the soundtrack at the beginning at the chemical plant is really, really cool. Natalia is a little bit forgettable. She's not the best Bond girl, but Xenia really makes up for that as being my favorite Bond girl. There's those scenes with Natalia and Bond on the beach in Cuba that really feel like deleted scenes, especially the scene where Bond is sitting there and then Natalia walks up and you get a really weird crotch shot. I could do without that, and it really doesn't add anything to the movie. I think those should have been cut out. But like I said, Xenia is my favorite Bond girl, and I learned something when I watched it with my fiancée, and that's that I think I have a type. My fiancée, she's tall, she's slender, she has dark brown hair and a strong jaw and extremely powerful thighs. So I guess I have a type. I guess I'm going to be marrying Xenia. I hope this lasts.
Hey Tom, hey Chris, it's Dan Frost here, just calling in with my 90-second review of Goldeneye. I absolutely love this film. It was the first Bond film I saw at the cinema due to my mum not allowing my dad to take a 9-year-old to see License to Kill, which I've never really forgiven her for. But anyway, yeah, I love this film. Some bits more than others. Really, really like Pierce in the role here. I think he really brings a fantastic combination of Roger and Sean. I know it's been said before, but I do really feel that he sort of nails both. Really love the action scenes. There is very little I don't like about this film, to be honest. I think it's definitely Pierce's best, and I would say probably in my top 5 of all time also. Thanks for the podcast, guys. Absolutely love it. Really enjoy listening to it, and long may it continue. Thank you. Bye.
Dear old fan James Bond news groups, I can't believe you all love that last Bond film. Pierce Brosnan is no Timothy Dalton. Sean Bean's plummy accent is terrible. His double-cross plot makes no sense. That CGI plane flying away as the facility explodes is just embarrassing. The soundtrack is atrocious. Is Jack Wade supposed to be funny? Why are his Marines lying in the grass at the end? Where were they when we didn't need them? It's not a good Bond film. What's wrong with you all, slugheads? Send. the younger me never warmed to this film, but I've seen it now for maybe the third time since it came out, and I'm happy to report it's much better than I recall. The action is slick, the photography is very rich, the fight scenes vicious, and the stunts very impressive. The cast is mostly very good, and although some deleted scenes do hurt the film's logic a bit, the script is pretty solid. At least back then they'd finished writing before they started filming. I still think Sean Bean is just awful, but on the plus side, the soundtrack, when it isn't being all synthy, has some very lush orchestral moments in it. Clearly no one on the production had ever sent an email before, although they do seem to have predicted WhatsApp by about 20 years. And that very last line from Brosnan clearly isn't in character, but I can forgive him. It's all gone up a notch in my estimation, and I now look forward to watching it again instead of dreading it. I still think it's a better computer game than it is a film, but at long last I can say, hey, have you seen that Goldeneye? It's alright, isn't it?
This is Darren calling from Southampton with my Goldeneye review. And for me, it's really going back to the teaser trailer. It said it's a new world, and that's how it really felt as a Bond fan. You'd go to the cinema, you'd hope to see a film that had that trailer. It was so good. But it really did feel like a time for change. The world needed to reconnect to Bond, and it was a time, new multiplexes popping up all over the place. You had luxury ice creams. But the film itself, it really did feel like this is when CGI started. At the time, it felt pretty impressive. Bond was ready to compete at the box office, and there were some classic stunts, the bungee jump, the tank chase, but really memorable characters, Zukovsky, Oromov, Xenia on the top in particular. Also, Isabella Scorupco made a real impact on me, and introduction of Judi Dench, and it was the start of a fantastic tenure as M. Other than that, the theme song and the title sequence all work. It all felt modern. On the downside, I don't think I want to bore you with the talk of the music again, but that was the big thing that lets it down. And also, I don't feel that Sean Bean quite hits the heights that we'd hope for. But overall, I felt Brosnan was so ready to take on the role at this time. He looked fantastic. I would say also it's his best performance in the role. I've got a real fondness for the film. It might even be a top 10. But it was a shame it didn't go the way Pierce would want.
Hey, gents, David Zaritsky from the Bond Experience. Hope you're doing well. I'm going to stay on brand and just focus on the brands and also the clothing in Goldeneye and give it that type of a review. Because I thought the writing, I thought the characters, I thought the model work was a little weak, but agree with all of your very, very entertaining reviews. So here we go. First of all, let's talk about clothing. I thought Lindy Hemming did an amazing job putting together the clothing. Let's talk about her Brioni charcoal window pane suit in the Q-Lab. Fits him. He looks the mustard, as you guys say in there. And then you have the navy bird's eye suit towards the end of the film with those great Turnbull and Astor ties. The navy cable knit jumper in the DB5 is classic. I can even deal with the ascot, no problem. But the military looks is what really stands out. That military jacket at the beginning and the military vest and outfit at the end make him look like a hardened assassin, which he is. I think they really brought it back to something very basic, which is fantastic. And then product placement, I didn't think it was overtly done. Like nowadays, BMW, IBM were subtle. Omega, it's appropriate. Perrier, a little forced. Is he really, smashing into Perrier bottles? The British Airways, but the Parker pen, that was everything. That is a type of pen you can find in any shop. So it really made it an everyman approach. And then Jack Daniels, showing that M is a little harder edge, and she'll drink the Jack Daniels, no problem, not just the Smirnoff. But then you've got the sharp.
Hello, JBR family. This is Dennis James calling from upstate New York, Adirondack Region, Station A, to talk about my favorite Brosnan Bond, Goldeneye, which, after 6 long years, sealed the deal. It was a done deal. From then on, we got a new Bond film every 2 years for quite a little while there. And I think it's because Pierce was the right guy for the job, but also I think it's because Goldeneye got it right. It really embraced classic Bond formula, the classic structure, the classic elements that make a Bond film a Bond film. Goldeneye embraced it. Wasn't ashamed of classic Bond, and to be honest, I think we need that now. Actually, sooner rather than later. I wouldn't wait for them to recast. Actually, I think we need that now. A Bond film like Goldeneye that gets it right, especially with the casting. I really love Famke. I love Isabella. I love Famke. I love Isabella. Sean Bean was good and great locations and a great overall look. And Pierce was the right guy for the job. He really came through, and there was no question about it. He was Bond in that film, and in all the other ones he did too. So, yeah, Goldeneye, my personal favorite Pierce movie. So, yeah, looking forward to hearing what everybody else thinks about this one. All right, guys, take care. Later.
This review might be a bit too late because I only just realized that the listener review for Goldeneye was coming in, but I just want to make sure that I got my voice in. I absolutely love Goldeneye. It's one of my favorites. Pierce is perfect. This is pretty much a perfect Bond film. They did everything they could after a 6-year hiatus, and it's brilliant. I can watch this film every day of the week. It also was the very first Bond film I was old enough to actually see in the cinema, so might be a bit biased. But yeah, I love it. Keep up the good work. Oh, this was Don Zuiderman, by the way, from the Netherlands. Bye-bye.
Hi there, it's Doug Thompson from Christchurch, New Zealand, calling in for the 92nd Goldeneye review. What can I say? This film's in my top 5 films of all the Bonds. I have very fond memories of going to see it at the cinema. It was the first Bond that I'd seen on the big screen. I'd seen a few of the Connery and Moore ones beforehand. But as a 10-year-old going into Goldeneye, from the gun barrel, it just enthralled me. And of course, it's like Tom, I got the VHS as soon as I could, and I wore the heck out of it. It's still probably my most watched Bond film. I've seen it at least 50 times, if not more. It's a class act. You know, there's everything. The stunts are great, the script is great, the characters are great, the setting is great. Obviously, the way it's been filmed, it kind of looks a little bit more TV-ish now these days compared to some of the later Bonds are a little bit more cinematic. The only thing really to fault is the score. But, you know, as pointed out in your guys' review, there are some great little moments, like the Goldeneye overture at the start for the pre-title sequence is fantastic. However, some of the other stuff is pretty rubbish, like the tank chase that was originally recorded by Sierra didn't even make it. But anyway, this is fantastic, and thank you very much.
A great Bond film starring the wrong Bond. It probably should have been Timothy Dalton. But as it stands, it's the only watchable Brosnan film. From here, but you can see the future mistakes the Brosnan films would take. Gratuitous violence, over-the-top action, and senseless plots. But Brosnan is charming in places, devastatingly handsome, and quite Irish in his demeanour, which we can credit him for. He did make Bond cool for a whole new generation.
Hi, Tom and Chris. This is JBR agent Frank McNeely from Tacoma, Washington, calling in with my 90-second review of Goldeneye. Goldeneye was the very first Bond film that I ever saw when I was 6 years old, and ever since I saw it for the very first time, I've been trying to be just like Pierce Brosnan in that film. Goldeneye, I feel like, will always be in my top 2 Bonds, just because it is the very first one that I ever saw, and because, for me, there are so many iconic moments in it. From Pierce Brosnan's debut as Goldeneye, from Sean Bean as 006. There's other countless things that are just so good about Goldeneye. And I know that there are a couple of flaws, which I know that you guys have already pointed out. One is specifically the music by Eric Serra. However, the two good things about Eric Serra's score is that, number one, Goldeneye's score is very unique in a good way, I think. I think it kind of sounds cool in parts. And secondly, Eric Serra's score heavily influenced Goldeneye 64, which is my all-time favorite video game, partially because I was a fan of Goldeneye before playing it, but then, you know, Goldeneye 64 was the ultimate chance to be Pierce in Goldeneye as James Bond, which is amazing. So without Eric Serra, really, we wouldn't have a good score for Goldeneye. So that's my 90-second review. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Hi guys, Fraser Lockley here with my 90-second review of Goldeneye. I'll be honest, I had a really uneasy start with this film. Coming off the back of Timothy Dalton no longer being in the role, I went to the cinema really not sure what to expect. And some things, you know, initially wrangled me a little bit. the sort of revisionist approach to the timeline. You know, they sort of set the pre-title just before Dalton's era, and then also there's a flippant comment made later about not going out on revenge and all that business. And I thought, you know, they're going down the populist route with this. So I come out of the cinema after enjoying it, but you know, thinking, you know, that they've done it better before, you know, but now time's gone by, and I'm so much more appreciative of it than I used to be. And I think central to that is Pierce Brosnan's portrayal in the role. His casualness, his coolness under fire, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I can watch it now and thoroughly enjoy it. So thanks, guys. Cheers. Bye.
So hi there. This is Gavin Ludlow Thompson, Station W, Westminster, currently in St Albans, with my co-host for this particular review of Goldeneye, none other than Miss Halle Berry. Say hello.
Hello, hello.
Well, Goldeneye is my second favourite Bond film after Goldfinger. And for her, it's also a Bond film that she really enjoys. But your second favourite film is what?
Die Another Day.
I'm afraid we're both Die Hard Another Day fans. But we love Goldeneye, and for you, I think it's in third place, isn't it?
Goldeneye is in third place, yes.
And what do you particularly like about Goldeneye?
Oh, I love the scene with Robbie Coltrane, particularly that line where he says, he wants me to do him a favor.
My knee aches every single day, twice as bad in winter. Anyway, we love Pierce Brosnan. I think he's the best Bond. He combines beautifully the hard-edged Connery with the lighter, more romantic touch of the late Sir Roger Moore. So take care now. Bye.
Hi, it's Harry Steele here. I have to admit, I've only listened to 1.5 episodes so far of your Goldeneye review. Had a busy life and all that jazz. But I had to leave a voicemail just to go to bat for Eric Serra's score. I know it's a controversial opinion, but I love this score. I think it really captures the sort of the cold, Iron Curtain feel of the movie. I know people are missing the old John Barry horns and things like that, but I don't know. I think it works really well for this subject matter, for the new world, new technology, new dangers and all that stuff. I do think the credits music is bullshit though, so I can't really defend that. The experience of love, I remember watching the film with my dad for the first time in the cinema, and his face as he turned to me as the experience of love came on, well, it told 1,000 words, basically. Also, yes, okay, hold my hands up. The music Eric Serra originally created for the tank chase sequence is also unlistenable. But so I think it was a good call for the James Bond theme to be put in during the sequence. But other than that, please give Eric Serra a break. Thanks a lot.
Henrik Jordan from Berlin here. Back in the day, Goldeneye and I started off on a very wrong note. And I mean that literally. Apart from being extremely disappointed that Dalton had dropped out of the franchise and that it took the Broccolis an eternity to restart it, there was that phone call from my best friend. He heard on the radio that the new Bond composer was named Eric Surround. What? Eric Surround? But then it hit me. Eric Serra, the Frenchman who scored for Luc Besson, movies I absolutely dislike, and I hated all of Serra's music as well. My friend said, yeah, that's the name. I acquired the soundtrack weeks before Goldeneye opened, hoping that there would be at least something good on it. Maybe loads of the Bond theme to save the day, and the melody of that great title song, which already received much airplay then in instrumental versions. But none of this was the case. Serra's music was even less inspired than I possibly could expect it when I'd seen the film for the first time. Apart from thinking that Brosnan, and especially his haircut, seemed a little bit too boyish in 1995, the score ruined everything for me. No Bondian feel whatsoever. Also, strangely, a very grey, colourless, bad weather movie. That was my Goldeneye experience. Of love? No, not at all. Worst end-title song of the franchise, and it sadly makes even Madonna's stupid techno blah blah shine to this day. It's still one of my least favorite Bond films, and I'm not happy to say that. I believe the film is way better than I think, but even multiple watchings could not tide me over yet.
This is Hunter Jameson calling in with my Goldeneye review. Goldeneye is one of my favourite Bond movies. I'd have to watch Casino and Majesties to see whether it's still on top, but it's got everything I want from a Bond film, and I think what makes this film so intriguing is the characters. It's got some of the best characters in the series. It's got Bond, Natalia, Alec, Xenia, who adds a lot of colour, Boris Zukovsky. It's got some of the best MQ and Moneypenny scenes, and this makes this film so much more colourful and interesting. And this film also mixes the old school into the modern era. You've got this classic Bond villain in Alec, but he's also a 00 in the Leanne's Cossack, which is just inspired. The look of the film is really interesting. You can take a shot from pretty much any moment in this film and compare it to another shot in the series, and you can just tell this film is Goldeneye. It's got this really distinct look, and there's like the shot in the pre-title sequence with Bond walking down the stairs and half his face is in shadow. It looks really, really beautiful. Also, this film's got, I think, probably one of the best title sequences, like that Soviet Union, all these women destroying statues of the Soviet era, and seeing the film in Russia, it just adds this really Bondian flavour, Cold War espionage thing. This film's got everything I want from a Bond film, and I love it. Thanks for having me, and remember, only 2 more films to go until Die Another Day.
This is Jack Lugo, and I am here with my 90-second review of Goldeneye. Goldeneye was the very first Bond film that I saw in the movie theater, so I do have an enormous affinity for it. I really think it's the film that got me into Bond. I kind of have a vague memory before that of maybe having seen, like a Bond on TV and stuff, but this is the one that got me excited about Bond for the first time. And with good reason. I mean, Brosnan is great in this, it's just a great, there's lots of great action, and it's just a great overall film. I recently watched Goldeneye with my son, and he really loved it. Actually, before we watched it, he had I think he saw a clip of it on YouTube or something, and he was asking about who the villain was, and I explained to him that the villain was, Alec Trevelyan, who was 006, and that intrigued him right away because he knows, Bond is 007. So the idea that 006 went up against 007 in Goldeneye really intrigued him. So we had a blast watching it again very recently. So Goldeneye, excellent film. Brosnan was great, and I loved it.
Hello, this is Jack from Station L, London. I would like to say Goldeneye, in my opinion, as well as the video game of it on the N64, is as close to perfect as perhaps the Bond series has ever gotten. However, with a huge asterisk. And that asterisk is most of the score, apart from the tank chase theme and the original song by Bond on the Edge, sung by Tina Turner. In fact, it makes me glad that Casino Royale came out by the same director, and that seems to be the film he was trying to go for with Goldeneye. Love the podcast. Speak soon.
I have very, very fond memories of this film. I enjoy it. It's a great double bill, actually, with Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I remember sort of discovering that almost by accident during my A-level year. On the score front of things, Run, Shoot, Jump is a great piece. And it accompanied the trailer for Air Force One in 1997, and that was around the time of Tomorrow Never Dies being released as well, so it kind of has a currency, and actually I wish they'd used it again. I actually think in a way the Serra score suits the kind of small scale of Goldeneye, because it is a fantasy film. You very much are projecting sort of a comic book arena. And I remember it was pitched back in the day before it got made, when it's still being developed, I think during Tim's tenure, as a cross between Batman and Goldfinger, which of course is exactly what it is. It owes a lot to the sort of the Batman renaissance of the time. And it is sort of a greatest hits of Bond. It's sort of a Bond for the sort of then New Labour Cool Britannia Brigade. It reinvigorated the franchise. It's not without lulls in pace, and it owes a lot as well, I think, to The Living Daylights. And I think of it sort of as an end to the Tim trilogy and a launch of the beginning of Pierce. Very happy memories of it, very sentimental and very lovely. And I wish they'd make another one just like that.
Hi everyone at James Bond Radio. This is Jamie calling from Bristol with a 90-second Goldeneye review. Goldeneye to me is the best of a very bad bunch, unfortunately, and the beginning of a very weak period in the Bond film series. What's been described by many people, including yourselves, as a greatest hits package is more of an exercise in Bond cliche box ticking. The fact that all the tropes are dealt with in the first, or rather crammed into the first 10 minutes of the film, means there's very little else to go round, and the rest of the film, I think, is spread very thinly. Although at its strongest during the St. Petersburg scenes, from the minute Bond touches down at the airport to the minute he touches down in Cuba, I feel the film is quite strong and very, very reminiscent of earlier Bond, particularly invoking memories of From Russia with Love. Unfortunately, the rest of the film doesn't live up to this. I mean, there are some strong points. I think Sean Bean made an excellent villain, and Famke Janssen was probably one of the best hench people in the entire series. Unfortunately, such ingredients don't make up to what I think is a particularly great film, and I don't think the Bond films ever really recovered from this until Casino Royale. But that's for another argument. Anyway, keep up the great work, guys. Looking forward to the next episode. Bye.
Hi, guys. This is Jamie from Brighton. I have been posted in Sweden for the past 11 years. This is my first 90-second review, and I am very happy that it is Goldeneye, as this film cemented my love for Bond. Pierce Brosnan is my favourite Bond. I love his blend of being focused on missions, but when it's time for fun, you just feel the character enjoying being himself. This is a Bond who looks great and is great with the ladies. The film has so many great characters, and the script really allows them to shine, even if it is just for a moment. I would argue there has not been a better Bond script since Goldeneye. I love the level of slight over-heightened realism, which is not pushed too much. There are just too many great moments in this film, big and small, and this is what makes this movie for me. It has the great big Bond moments, but the small parts are just as great. Whenever Pierce's Bond is talking to someone else, it is just pure class. I gave him the limp. The Bond girls are great, and I love Sean Bean's Alec Trevelyan. He is possibly what Bond could be if he went too far the wrong way. I could talk and talk about Bond and Goldeneye. Keep up the great work. Thanks, guys.
Hello, Chris and Tom and the rest of the JBR family. This is Jared Albrecht, the yard sale artist from On Her Majesty's Secret podcast. The first 90-second review I ever did was for License to Kill because it's my favorite all-time film, and I gave you my stream of consciousness as to why. So let me tell you why Goldeneye is officially my second favorite Bond film. The bungee jump, you can't win, leap from bike to plane. Tina Turner belts it, the DB5. Zinnia Zergena on the top. Stealth copter, I can't breathe. Boris, BMW Z3. Natalia, Q and his lunch. Jack Wade and his butt tat. Valentin Zarkovsky and his sore knee. Mini driver, Tank effing Chase. Dame Judi Dench's M. Perrier. I'm invincible. Large amounts of computing power. A 00 villain. Arecibo satellite dish. I've been there. Brutal 00 fight with a metal stair roll. Alec Trevelyan and his multiple deaths. What's happened? You said 90 seconds. You set the timers for 45 seconds. No!
Hello there, this is Stephen Bain from Surrey, and this is my 90-second review of Goldeneye. First of all, let me say that Goldeneye was the very first James Bond film I saw when I was 11, I think, in 1996 on VHS, so it's one that's I've always felt a very strong sense of nostalgia towards, so maybe I'm a little bit biased in that regard. For many years, it was one of my favourite Bond films, and it's still one that I genuinely really enjoy. I think it's got a fantastic cast, some brilliant set pieces in terms of action, such as the tank chase, the archive shootout, and the final on board the antenna. Brosnan, I think, does a really good job in a debut performance, and he's actually a lot more convincing, I think, than he is later on in Die Another Day. Also, Judi Dench does a brilliant job in her first debut performance as M, and also Natalia Simonova is one of my favourite Bond girls. I will admit that it probably doesn't hold up quite as well as I would like it to, but it's still one that I have a lot of fun when I'm watching. And I think it was a good start for Martin Campbell, and he would go on to better himself even more in Casino Royale. It was a film that was needed at the time, and it was a modernisation of James Bond formula. Thank you.
This is Javi calling from Austin, Texas, home of the literary Felix Leiter, calling in with my remarks on Goldeneye. I was 18 when Goldeneye came out, working at the movie theater. My roommate was a manager there when he called me down to Theater 1 to see a new trailer. He didn't tell me what it was, but the second I heard those familiar notes, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Brosnan came sauntering out in all his 00 glory, and I was hooked. I knew Bond was back. Now, GoldenEye's not my favorite of Brosnan's or in general of the series by any stretch. A large part of that has to do with the music just completely taking me out of it. But there's so many iconic scenes. The dialogue is great. And from 1995 on, I started carrying a Parker pen. The movie itself was so influential to my life. I coveted an Omega Speedmaster for 22 years till I finally got one. And it changed the game. It brought Bond back. And I'm always going to be grateful to it for that, how it inspired video games. And the Laserdisc I had, I wore it out watching it until Tomorrow Never Dies came out. So thanks for your coverage, fellas. I appreciate it, and looking forward to the next one.
Hey, Tom and Chris, how's it going? This is Jeroen on YouTube, better known as Dutch Bond Fan. I've been meaning to get one of these listener reviews in for quite a few episodes now, and I just kept on missing them every time because I've been so busy. But I wouldn't want to miss Goldeneye because it's easily one of my favorites in the series. I grew up with it, and I still think it holds up so well. It's one of the few movies in the series that has the perfect balance between the dark and the lightheartedness. It really has something for both. Also, it has one of the strongest casts in any of the Bond films. I mean, you have Sean Bean, Alan Cumming, Robbie Coltrane, the absolute gorgeous Isabella Scorupco, one of the best Bond girls, and of course the ultimate Dutch pride, Famke Janssen. I mean, good heavens, man, that chick is just incredible. Easily the best femme fatale in the series. Even when comparing her to all the male henchmen, she still comes up as the best for me. I also really like Brosnan in this. He just brings back that sheer cool feeling of just wishing you could be the son of a bitch. And that was kind of absent with Dalton. And I love Dalton, don't get me wrong, but he just brought back a lot of the fun and the feeling of wishing you could be him. And I haven't really seen that since Moore, or maybe even since Connery. And Goldeneye is easily his best Bond film in my opinion. I kind of always considered Goldeneye the Goldfinger of my generation. Keep up the good stuff, guys. Hope to guest star on your show someday. So, bye. Take care.
Hey, this is Jim Key from the great state of New Jersey. Well, almost great state. Anyway, with my 90-second Goldeneye review. Goldeneye was the film that got me back into the Bond franchise. I was a little disappointed in my younger years that Pierce wasn't selected to be Bond, and now that he finally got to be Bond, like he should have been all along, I was really stoked, and I just remember being like loving every minute of this movie. Watching it again and again and again in the years that follow it, it's really held up for me. I really love this movie. I think Pierce is fantastic. He looks great. The Bond girls are amazing. It's just an all-around fun movie. Sean Bean is amazing. And it's cool to see another 00. Like, you rarely get to see that, and especially the prolonged interaction. And you know that any kind of problem is going to be double because he's that close to Bond. But anyway, so that's it. I love it, and keep up the good work, guys. Thanks for doing your podcast.
Hey, Tom and Chris, this is John calling in from New Zealand, home of director Martin Campbell, who really delivered with Goldeneye as he did with Casino Royale. There's not a whole lot I can say about this film other than it's just the perfect Bond. It's everything you want from a 007 flick. Love me some Pierce. Love me some Honor Top. That's all I got to say. Cheers.
Hi, this is John from Westgate-on-Sea in Kent. Tom has said on a few occasions about how Goldeneye was his fandom conversion film. It's similar for me. Up until this point, I'd been something of a casual fan, mainly through watching the films when they were on TV. I actually remember making my own set of tarot cards after watching a Saturday night screening of Live and Let Die on ITV. After Goldeneye, I started to collect the VHS cassettes through the Britannia Video Club. If you're British, over 30 and into films, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I think Goldeneye is a super film and really cracks presenting something we know as familiar but in a really fresh way. I think Pierce is an excellent Bond, and even more outstanding when I consider some of the substandard material he had to work with following this debut. He's a fantastic looking guy, and he has the physicality, swagger, charm and ability to deliver a line with a twinkle in his eye rather than a wink and a thumbs up to the camera. The script and dialogue is arguably among the best in the series and all helps to paint the picture of the Bond character and the people around him. There is a constant nod to Bond's past and there's a lot of humour, but nothing ever seems cheap or like the audience is being patronised. A few zinger highlights: beg your pardon, forgot to knock, sexist, misogynist dinosaur, if I want sarcasm, Mr. Tanner, I'll talk to my children, I give in the limp, and Bond's comment about the lack of sinister interrogations. I'm not sure there has been another Bond with so much smart humour in it and delivered so classily. So a big thumbs up from me, and I'm going to be extremely grumpy now until you get to Casino Royale.
Hi guys, Julian O'Hare here. I remember very clearly working at the cinema when Goldeneye came out, and it had been a long time, and we got the film in like 2 days early, so we all stayed and had a midnight showing. But I still had that hangover of really wanting a third Tim film, and I think that spoilt my enjoyment a bit. But I do remember the audience reaction of the motorbike jump, which was absolutely insane. Every time we showed it at the cinema, and it was on for months, the audience just went crazy. And it was a really interesting thing for me because I'd also been at the cinema working there a few years earlier when License to Kill came out, and that was very subdued and kind of not particularly full screens. So look, looking back on it now, I feel it was the film that really saved the franchise. Right film, right actor, right director, right time. And it was up against it. It was really uncertain when it came out whether it would do well. Was there an audience for it? But I think it's just an awesome film. Really, really brilliant. Appealed to fans, non-fans, people watching it for the first time. And Pierce just looks unbelievable in it, and he's perfect. So yeah, Goldeneye, absolutely top-notch. Love it. Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Hi, this is Kevin from Michigan. Goldeneye is one of my favorite Bond films. It's the film that changed Bond from a summer blockbuster to a winter juggernaut, where it has remained ever since. I've been a fan of Pierce's since Remington Steele, and I was so happy when he finally got the role. He was born to play Bond. The persona fit him like a well-tailored suit. Everything works in this film except for the ill-conceived score. I didn't mind it when I first saw the film on opening day, but it hasn't aged very well since then. The film is everything a Bond movie should be, with a big emphasis on fun. I'm so beyond bored of the brooding Bond of today. Let's bring back the fun that Goldeneye so cheerfully embraced.
Hello JBR, this is Mark from Station NV, Neen Valley, and for purely sentimental reasons, Goldeneye vies for the top spot as my favourite James Bond film. A lot of reasons really. I was 21 in 1995, and having grown up with the Bond films in the 80s on TV and at the cinema, I never thought I'd see a Bond film again. I don't think anybody did at that stage, but when Goldeneye came out, it absolutely delivered everything I wanted in a Bond film at that time. Pierce Brosnan just seemed to combine all the best elements of the other actors before him, but with a fresh, modern spin on the role. If I was to pick one scene that sort of typifies that, it would probably be the tank chase. That moment when he just bursts through the wall to pursue Omarov and trying to rescue Natalia. I remember seeing that on the cinema, and it just looked like the coolest thing I'd ever seen on a cinema screen at that stage. It was just so cool to see it. And that little adjustment of the tie he does at the end was just perfect. So that's it. That's all I've got to say.
Hi JBR family, this is Agent Marlene from Munich, and this is my review of Goldeneye. I love this movie. Pierce Brosnan to me is a perfect Bond, and when I read the books I actually picture some crossover between Pierce Brosnan and the drawing of Bond in the comics. I think Goldeneye has one of the coolest pre-title sequences in the series because it's like a prologue to the rest of the movie, and it gives us some cool backstory to Bond and the two villains 006 and Oromos. Also really like Natalia as a Bond girl. When I was a teenager, I went to the hairdressers with a picture of her requesting her hairdo, but the hairdresser actually ended up talking me out of it because she said it would take too much time to style it in the morning, which is probably true. The other characters are great too. Valentin Sukovsky's character is great. His line, Walter PPK, 7.65 millimeters. Only 3 men I know use such a gun. I believe I killed 2 of them. It's absolutely superb. It's got to be up there with one of the best in the series. Xenia is a fantastic henchperson too. She's almost like Necros in the way that you don't see her main modus operandi coming as a victim, which is quite nice. Anyways, 90 seconds is really short, but the bottom line is I really like the movie overall, and Bond returns after the end of the Cold War with an absolute bang.
Hello, JBR. This is Marty from the United States. Getting my comments on Goldeneye. Definitely a must-have for anybody. This is one of the best games that you can ever get for the N64. Definitely fun playing against other... Wait a minute. This is for the movie, right? Oh, yeah. The movie is amazing. Easily Brosnan's best, and definitely one of the best out of the whole series. This is, like you said, the movie that is a best hits, greatest hits, whatever you want to call it, of James Bond. This is the movie that I think you should show anybody that's never seen James Bond before. It has all the great possible features of him. Great character, great villain, great everything. That's just my opinion. I think this and Goldfinger and Spy and Living Daylights probably the best ones out of the whole bunch. I'll talk to you guys again. See ya.
Hi, my name is Matt. I'm from the James Bond complex, one half of the James Bond complex. So I'll try and be as short as possible with my review of Goldeneye. I absolutely adore this movie. I saw this in '95 under the title Goldeneye L'œil de feu in Quebec. In Canada. Associate this movie with my adolescent years. I was a teenager when I saw it. I was supposed to go see it with a bunch of girls. It didn't work out. They saw it ahead of me and my group of friends, and everyone, even though we didn't see it at the same time, adored it. I associate also with the video game that came out a couple of years later, which is fantastic. Most of you know. I also love the Bond girls, especially Famke Janssen, which I still, she stole my heart. Xenia, not up. Mwah! I love it to you. So I love the action. I love the tank chase, the gigantic and tandem fight. The fight with Pierce Brosnan and Sean Bean is fantastic. I forgot the last time I saw it. Man, it's brutal as hell. The opening stunt with the bungee. Man, there's so much to love about this movie, and I'm almost done with my 90 seconds. But yeah, no, it's fantastic. Best Brosnan Bond movie. That's it.
Hi guys, it's Ozzy Kilgallen from Perth, Western Australia. Goldeneye review. Have watched Bond on the big screen since seeing Live and Let Die in 1973 at the drive-in. Every 2 years, new Bond film. License to Kill. Loved it. Loved Tim. Nothing. Tim's gone. Tim's not doing it. What's happening? We don't know. Goldeneye is announced. Tim's not doing it. Pierce Brosnan is 007. The teaser trailer comes out. You're expecting somebody else? Amazing. Can't wait. Trawling newspapers, trawling TV shows, recording anything, any clip I can get my hands on to watch. So excited. entered the competition, won tickets to a sneak preview of Goldeneye. Went along, so excited, and didn't disappoint. Love the movie, love everything about it except the soundtrack. But just think Pierce was the man. He looks fantastic in the role. The script is tight, it's neat, it suited the time. You look back at it now, it's such a great debut. Fantastic movie, and kept Bond alive, brought him back, and kept it going. And here we are today because of Goldeneye. If Goldeneye hadn't been the success it was, who knows? And that's a worry. Thanks, guys. Love the podcast. Keep it up. Chat again soon. Bye.
Hi there, James Bond Radio. This is Philip Latchford with my 90-second review of Goldeneye. Well, it was certainly a long wait from License to Kill, which I absolutely loved. But to finally get Pierce Brosnan as James Bond was a dream come true. I loved him in Remington Steele, and he had suave and sophistication, and he was very, very impressive in Goldeneye. He was a combination of Roger Moore and Sean Connery, so he seemed to be, at the time, the best bits. I really liked the setting of the film. I liked the whole Monte Carlo scene. It was just amazing. He'd never been there before. And the whole bit in Russia, you know, you actually thought it was filmed in St. Petersburg, even though it was London. And I liked Natalia. She was okay. However, the Boris character, I just didn't get. He seemed like he should be in another film. And Sean Bean, well, he didn't really do it for me either. But I have to say that the thing that really lets the film down is the soundtrack. It just isn't Bond enough. The theme tune, fantastic, but the rest, Eric Serra, it's just awful. And it really taints my view of the film. Sorry about that. And I know you absolutely love it, but unfortunately, it just sounded bad.
Yes, thank you very much for saying such nice things about Goldeneye. Obviously, it was my favourite Bond, one that I had a certain confidence in. Obviously, a lot rested on it. And, if they could all have been like that, I think everybody would have loved my Bond. Terrible shame. As such, it was a safe pastiche, sort of a greatest hits of Bond, very much in the sort of the Tony Blair era mould. Of course, I played Blair in a thinly disguised way later on in life. So, yeah, I think we had a great movie there with Goldeneye. Two lovely girls, Famke and Isabella. Great director, Martin Campbell. Omega watches. Nice car. Nice locations. All things you want from a Bond film. And I think there was still room to peel away the layers. I think there's still a profundity to it. Beneath all the fun and the glamour, we really get into the character of Bond there, for a second anyway. And if there'd been more like that, who knows? So, anyway, guys, thanks very much for showing it. Keep up the good work. Anybody else want to chip in? Well, of course, I really think I should have done it. It was written very much with me in mind. And there are even references to License to Kill in there. There's a reason why they started, 10 years later or whatever. Keep it up, guys. Love it.
Hello, JBR. This is Rahi with the Goldeneye review. This is one of my favorite Bond films, top 5 Bond films for sure. This is also the first movie I watched in the Bond franchise and made me a Bond fan ever since. And here's why. Brosnan being suave, humorous, and serious shows Connery, Moore, and Dalton all in one. I would have to say this movie is a Goldfinger of my generation. Both films have lots of similarities. I agree with everything you said about the film, the villain being Gottfried, and knows Bond very well, something that we haven't seen before. Love the Bond girls Isabella and Famke, what happens to be the best henchwoman since Mayday, and having something of a mark to kill with her thighs very unique, such as her name as well. I love Q back as well as M, and the whole meeting they have is so good. The change of making the woman was such a good choice. Bill Tanner and Moneypenny, I love it both, being against Bond's coy remarks and demeanor. It's something I always wanted to see. The tank chase would stand out as well as the sauna scene. Watch a bucket load of times. One thing I would love to see was Sylvia Trench coming back in TND. As Tom and Chris stated, it should have been in this film. Eunice Grayson's daughter took a photo with Pierce on set. She should have played MI6 Valuator Caroline. This would have been a nod to both women being part of both Bond's introduction toward the casino. I love the use of the title and significance. There's lots of Fleming-esque in this film. I'm glad that C. Brosnan had a chance to show his Bond a lot of quick cuts, but I didn't mind Martin. He did the same with Casino. He did a good job directing. Some of the sets or showpieces are very well done. I love the base at the end, as well as nods to previous mission, LTK, such as the plane and the valuation. So they have the same movie in continuity, and that's really good to see.
Hello JBR, this is Ralph calling in from Hamburg with my 90 seconds review of Dun 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 Da-da! Goldeneye. I'm probably in the mainstream of my thoughts about this film because I love almost everything about it except for Eric Serra's score, which is so awful that it would actually be fitting to swap the music in Goldeneye with the music in Die Another Day in order to make Die Another Day a wholesome, shitty film and Goldeneye a fully brilliant movie. Starting off with the pre-titles, they are amazing, even though the editing of the final cliff jump where he gets to the plane is a bit silly, but the following title sequence definitely makes up for it because Tina Turner's song is so good and the animation that accompanies it is also brilliant. The entire plot of the film is good and it unfolds in a neatly structured way. The introduction of the new M and Moneypenny are tied into the plot very nicely. It doesn't feel shoehorned in any way, and it's good to see a strong female character that's not there just for the sake of having a strong female character, but actually works well with Bond's own nature. The gadgets are brilliant. As you two said, the way they dealt with the BMW bothers me a bit, but the tank chase is one of my favorite Bond moments in the entire series. Xenia is extremely arousing, and Pierce is a very attractive man.
Hi guys, this is Rob from Northampton in the UK. First time voicemailer, but a long time listener. Thank you for all the work that you guys do. The podcasts and the community are top class. Onto the film. So Goldeneye, for me, it's a romp. It's easily in my top 5 Bond films. It's the first Bond film that I actually watched. I grew up in the 90s, so Pierce is very much the Bond that I grew up with. The N64 game that went along with it was amazing as well. It's thanks to that my parents realised that we weren't cool enough at school unless we had the N64 and the GoldenEye game. So we got that and we got to play it a lot, which was great. In terms of the film, the car could have been a bit better. It's a bit of a hairdresser's car, the Z3. I actually thought the soundtrack was okay, but then I like the For Your Eyes Only soundtrack, which you guys weren't so keen on either. I think Ladies First is a cheeky track, and we share the same passions, and That's What Keeps You Alone are kind of close to what a Barry score would be. It's a film that was not set in the Cold War, but it kind of has that essence of a spy thriller still, and you sometimes wonder if the Cold War's actually ended anyway. The dialogue is up there with the best in the series. Robbie Coltrane looks like he had a great time, as does Famke Janssen as well, with the after Tastes Like Strawberries. This is a Bond film that the world needed in 1995. It was modernised, romping, thrilling, but more accountable and approachable. The new M as a Lady was an inspired choice, and Samantha as Moneypenny worked well as well. Bye.
Hey Tom, hey Chris, and the JBR family. It's Ross Strong from Brisbane in Queensland, Australia. Look, I love Goldeneye. Goldeneye was my Bond movie. It was my reintroduction to Bond as I was going through my teen years. And look, between looking at Brosnan, who I actually had seen in Remington Steele just beforehand, just really galvanised me back into Bond. And it was such an important time in my life. I remember collecting all of the stuff. I had the book, I had the making of, I had the poster. I just loved pretty much everything about this movie, with one exception, and obviously that is the score. And I guess, look, in retrospect, they probably would change direction, I think, if they had the chance. But, this movie was brilliant. I think Martin Campbell was very much someone who should be credited with the new Bond. But I just loved everything about this movie. And look, I can't believe we're at Goldeneye already, and we're on to Tomorrow Never Dies next. So can't wait. Keep up the good work, guys. Cheers.
Right, now that we've got that out of the way, I can give you my Goldeneye review. This is Ross Underwood from Station L in Leicester, and basically I saw Goldeneye about 96 when I was 13 years old, and at that time we'd seen 16 Bond movies, 27 years of sort of different tones. So you've got the Fleming feel of Sean, you've also got the Fleming feel of Dalton, you've got Lazenby in there, you've also got the comedic approach with Roger. Then to see Pierce bring the sort of 90s action approach to it, it didn't feel right at the time. Now that might be due to the soundtrack because it wasn't Bond. And I think if you've got a Bond movie, you've got to have the music in there. And unfortunately, I think Eric Serra just didn't hit the mark, which kind of hampered my viewing experience of it at that time. But now I'm 35. I can appreciate movies on a different level. You know, the workmanship that goes into it and the choices that are made. And so, with that in mind, it's made that movie a lot better. I've been able to broaden my mind to the point of where I can actually appreciate it on a different level. So, in short, a very good Bond movie, not the best soundtrack, but we've all heard that before.
Hey Tom and Chris, this is Shamir Ravji from Station C Canada, leaving my 90-second review on Goldeneye. I was really excited to hear that this movie was going to be released, especially after the 6-year gap between License to Kill and this movie. After I saw the movie initially in the theaters, I didn't really take to it right away, but didn't really panic about the franchise's future. Although after watching it again, after 17 years in 2012, it really did start to grow on me and reminded me of Octopussy, especially with the similarities between Kamal Khan and Orlov in Octopussy and Trevelyan and General Arumov in Goldeneye. I'm with both of you in terms of the soundtrack just being quite lousy, especially with the ladies first thing. It really did sound like a video game. And I really did like Onatop as the henchwoman. I really did like a lot of the humorous moments when I started watching it subsequent times and really appreciating it for really what it was. Anyways, maybe I'll feel the same way about movies like Spectre. Anyways, keep up the good work. Thanks. Bye.
Hi, Tom and Chris. This is Shane Furlong calling in from Dublin, my Goldeneye review. This is one of my all-time favourite Bond films, although I am a bit biased as Goldeneye was the first Bond film I ever saw, and Pierce was my Bond growing up. But I really do feel that it still holds up today. While the plot in itself isn't too special, I believe it's the characters and the setting that elevates this movie to the next level for me. As you said, guys, a genius move to set most of the film in post-Soviet Russia, and Bond looks really great in this kind of aesthetic. All the characters in the film are just so colourful, and the way they kind of interact with each other makes them seem way more multi-dimensional than others in the series. But yeah, as expected, my main issue with this film is the score. It's really just awful. And just to see how much better the tank chase is with that admittedly really mediocre piece of music by Altman just makes me wish that we had an Arnold or a Barry score for this film. But yeah, Pierce is brilliant in this film. Perfect mix of style and humour and action. Natalia, brilliant Bond girl. And yeah, that's mostly it. So thanks guys for the podcast. Sensational as always. And really looking forward to getting stuck into the rest of the Brosnan films in the future. Thanks.
Agent Gardner with my review for Goldeneye. This, as I remember, was the first James Bond film I watched with my parents, as my parents like James Bond, but not to the obsession I have. I was really excited to see the new James Bond, Pierce Brosnan. As soon as I started watching it, I was excited seeing the cars racing down the hillside. I was only 12 at the time. Still, for me, a cracking film and a superb soundtrack. It has a great cast that works really well together. Still like relaxing and watching the film. Keep up the great work, JBR.
Hello JBR, Stan from Surrey here, calling in with my 90-second review of Goldeneye, the first and best outing from my personal favourite, James Bond, Pierce Brosnan. I just love this film. It was one of those films I had taped off the telly when I was a kid and watched it just so many times. Personal standout to me is who I think is rather underappreciated henchman, General Arkady Grigorovich Udamov, head of Space Division. He's just so endlessly quotable. Use the bumper. That is for. Do you know who the real enemy is, Dmitri? Do you? And I think he serves wonderfully as a first act villain before Sean Bean rears his scarred face and turns in a wonderful performance as 006. The dialogue in this film is just perfect, as you discussed. Other strong hench people in Xenia and Boris, and I think Natalia Fyodorova-Semyonova is an excellent Bond girl, played very well by Isabella Scorupco. All in all, excellent film. Top 3 for me, I would say. Thanks very much. Goodbye.
Hi Tom, hi to Chris, it's Steve from Northampton, just leaving a 90-second review for Goldeneye. I think it's by far Pierce Brosnan's best film. He looks the best in that film of all of them. I think he's probably the right age. And again, with the Brosnan bashing, I think it's more for his later films, not for this one. It's a film that's always been in my top 10 for sure. It has a lot of nostalgia for it because I was probably about 11 when it came out. And yeah, like you guys said, great script, awful score to it. Wish that was the only thing that's probably changed about it, to be honest with you. Other than that, I think it's an absolute cracking film. Keep up the good work. Bye.
Our man in Slough, Terry Adlam here. Goldeneye isn't my favourite Bond film, but it is in my top 24. It also has a special place in my heart, as I had the honour of going to the Royal Premiere at the Odeon Leicester Square with the present Mrs. Adlam. As we walked in on the red carpet, the crowd were cheering and clapping. They obviously know who I am, I thought, as I turned to wave, only to see Tina Turner arriving. Oh well, I can dream. But I did sit next to Joe Robinson, Peter Franks from Diamond, throughout the film, which I absolutely love. The film, that is, not Joe Robinson, who was a lovely fella, but as I said, I had my own Bond girl with me. Goldeneye had been a long way, but worth it. I'd been a fan of Pierce's since his Remington Steele days, and seeing him in The Fourth Protocol in '87 was convinced that he was the man to play Bond. And boy was I right. He may not have been the Fleming Bond that Tim portrayed, but he was a continuation of the movie Bond, taking a lead from Sir Roger and infusing bits of Sean, George and Tim, and adding his own immense swagger and style. Pierce revitalised a franchise that some numpties thought was dead. Bronson saved Bond. Obviously he didn't do it alone, and was aided and abetted by a great cast and production team. As mentioned in the review, Derek Meddin's model work was fantastic and a fitting tribute to the man who, along with John Steers, set the benchmark for Bond special effects. Goldeneye ticked most of my boxes, yep, even the one marked soundtrack. Wasn't that keen on Jack Wade and the BMW, and the character of Boris slightly irritated me. But apart from that, it was great to see Bond back, and back to stay.
Hi guys, how's it going? Sean O'Hare here, just leaving a 90-second review of Goldeneye. Really enjoyed the last few episodes, lads, and hearing your views on the film, breaking down the film itself. This film got me into Bond big time. This and the N64 game Goldeneye took my the Bond to the next level for me. Film from start to finish is non-stop, just the action set pieces, like the dam jump at the start, amazing. The pre-title sequence is one of the best in the series for me. That moving on into just the rest of the film, the Q scene, the M scene, just the actual action itself, the tank chase, there's brilliant set pieces. Great to see what Martin Campbell did. He brought it on later on to do it with Casino Royale as well. Take your point in the soundtrack. I actually like some of the tracks on it, but the other ones are just weird. They're really out there. Really looking forward to the next few episodes and the next reviews of the next few Brosnan films, lads. Pierce Brosnan, really love his interpretation of Bond. Brosnan is my favourite Bond. It's the Bond I actually grew up with. Yes, I like them all, but I have a bit of a soft spot for Brosnan, and he is Irish. Okay, lads, keep up the good work, and looking forward to the next review of Tomorrow Never Dies. Cheers now. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, it's Jason Allentoff from New Jersey, big 007 fan and a big fan of James Bond radio. Goldeneye has a very special place in my heart because I was turning 14 the week it came out, and one of my birthday presents was premiere tickets to the world premiere of Goldeneye at Radio City Music Hall. I sat 5 seats away from Jeffrey Holder, and it was a movie experience I will never forget for as long as I live. The day before seeing the movie, I was at the convention with Lee Pfeiffer and Dave Worrell and everybody else, and it was a magical time. I met Desmond Llewellyn. The movie is fantastic. I agree with you guys. It holds up very well, and because being at the premiere, I love it. And the dialogue was spot on. Michael France did a wonderful job with that script. Pierce was top-notch in the part. Everything about this movie was the kitchen sink James Bond film. It had all the elements, a great plot, a great bad guy, beautiful women, the works, the gadgets. I loved it, and I still love it to this day. So keep up the great work. As far as Eric Serra's score, good points and bad, but on a whole, it kind of stunk. But the movie's great. You guys are great. I'll keep listening, and I'll share my Desmond Llewellyn photo with you guys on the anniversary of the premiere, which is coming up in a couple of weeks.
Hi Tom and Chris, it's Gary Mack calling from Lancaster in Lancashire with a 90-second review of Goldeneye. After a period of 6 years, the James Bond franchise was about to be relaunched, this time with a new actor playing the role of James Bond. In walks Pierce Brosnan and literally drags 007 into the 90s. After the gun barrel sequence, we see Bond running and preparing to jump off the dam. This, for me, without question, was one of the most spectacular opening stunts seen in the film series, performed by Wayne Michaels. However, I did feel that the sequence was let down when Bond leaps off his bike and skydives towards the plane. This did spoil the opening of the film for me, and I assume many will agree, but soon forgotten after the wonderful title song by Tina Turner. There was certainly some interesting casting for this film, particularly Dame Judi Dench's M, an inspired casting choice, I thought. Samantha Bond as Moneypenny, Isabella Scorupco, Famke Jensen as Xenia Onatop, Sean Bean, Alan Cumming, and not to forget, Gottfried John, a brilliant German actor. I know you've also give a shout out to Derek Meddings. It was an outstanding contribution. Keep up the good work, guys. I'd give the film a good 8 out of 10.
Wow. I mean, did you expect to get that many? That was a really good return on the amount of listener reviews there.
It certainly was. Brilliant. It certainly was. And I think that the impression I get is that Goldeneye is actually perhaps more important to the series than I thought it was. Because I feel like I've said often myself, this is the one that captured me at that perfect age of 13 and catapulted me into being just a super geek about Bond. And I feel like that was a similar experience for a lot of people from around our age group, isn't it? It's like, if you imagine, I suppose if you imagine growing up when you were a bit older than we were in the 80s, if you were 13 during the late Roger period, maybe you would have gone to something like Indiana Jones a bit more, or indeed Star Wars, or in those days you had the Die Hards creeping in and all that kind of stuff around the Timmy era and all that kind of stuff. Maybe Bond wouldn't have appealed to you as much during that time frame. Do you know what I mean? Whereas then Goldeneye comes, knocks it out of the park, and for all those kids in that age that we were then, was like the perfect. It's a lot of the time it's about timing, isn't it? If the timing is right,
definitely,
then something can truly explode. And I think maybe that's what happened with Goldeneye.
Well, equally, I think you've got that 6-year hiatus, but you've also got the sort of rating, License to Kill being a 15. That stopped a lot of people. So really, from a PG from the Living Daylights, you've got 87 through to 95.
Yeah,
that's a long time, isn't it? Like 8 years where you might not be able to see a Bond film in the cinema for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a long hiatus for people of that sort of age range. And then suddenly, like you said, it comes in, and loads of people, that was their first Bond cinema experience. Loads of people said that on the reviews. And it obviously had, such a positive effect. Because if you think about it, like, if your first Bond experience, I guess you wouldn't be listening to this if it was the case, but if your first Bond experience was a film and you're like, it's all right, you might not get that drive to want to watch the rest of them and get involved.
Yeah.
But clearly, Goldeneye did its job in what it set out to do.
Yeah.
Now, there wasn't total praise, and we'll come on to that a bit more, but to reintroduce Bond for the 90s, that was the mission, wasn't it? That was ultimately the mission, and that is a huge amount of pressure, and it needed to succeed for Bond to succeed, and it clearly did that. So I mean, that comes across really well in some of the listeners there.
100%. I think there's what makes it even more important as well, and I think it's perhaps somewhat unique for that as well. Like when you go back to the 60s, the whole Bond mania explosion, Goldfinger hits, it goes massive, and that obviously bleeds into everything. You see those old, magazine ads of Connery with his bourbon and all that kind of stuff. Was it bourbon? He was. I
think he might have been. There was a Japanese. Did he do a Japanese whiskey at one point?
I can't remember, but the ad I'm talking about anyway.
Bourbon,
all that kind of stuff where Bond was literally everywhere. I think with Goldeneye, there was a similar thing because obviously you had the Nintendo 64 game as well, which that was so important as well, and for that to come along around those days could only have improved.
That came out a year or two later, didn't it?
I feel like it probably must have done. Yeah,
must have done.
Yeah,
but I mean that every single gamer had Goldeneye and loved Goldeneye, and that was mentioned so many times. But yeah, I mean that elevated the film in a way. I think
Goldeneye 64 came out August 25th, 1997. Can you believe?
97. So there we go. So
yeah.
Tomorrow Never Dies sort of time.
Yeah.
But that obviously that helped the film as well, and the film helped the game. So it's kind of like worked both ways. But like going back again with some of the listeners, so much praise for Brosnan, because I know we've said it a lot before, but you do get the Brosnan bashers out there, and people were sort of saying, well, that tends to be towards the latter films of Pierce's reign. And there's a lot of love for Goldeneye and Pierce, particularly what he brought to the role in terms of bridging the gap of all of them, of like Sean, of obviously George, Roger, and Tim, like getting little bits of each of them, which is quite interesting, because everything before had been quite quite different from one another, and Pierce kind of helped to bridge that gap. And a lot of people obviously mentioned handsome dude, does well with the ladies, and that is an important factor, I think, definitely. And also, I think a lot of people mentioned that it kind of returned to classic Bond in terms of like the classic formula of Bond, and I think that's definitely the case as well, isn't it? In terms of the gadgets, the cars, the women, and it just had that classic feel to it, I think. And that's what everyone seemed to take note of.
It definitely does. And we referred to it as a greatest hits Bond movie kind of when we reviewed it, didn't we? And that's very much, you've got all of those elements in there. You've got Bond walking into Q's lab, you've got all that stuff going on. I suppose the one core element you don't really have is the whole car sequence, when you look at something like Goldfinger, Spy Who Loved Me, those kind of touch point Bond films. Like, it's got everything that those films kind of have. Do you know what I mean? You've got the exaggerated henchman that's very standout, very interesting henchman. You've got a cool villain. There's typically a car chase with lots of gadgets going on. We didn't get that, obviously, but we still got the introduction to it. We still got the car, the car thing. And some killer stunts and all the rest of it, and a good fight in a crazy location, hanging off the dish and all that kind of stuff. So it very much is, and equal parts. Like this, for me, is obviously a very, very important Bond film, and I will always love it to the day I die. But equally, I see how the people that don't like it, why they wouldn't like it, and I would typically say a lot of Dalton ears would say something along the lines of, maybe I enjoyed Goldeneye, but I wish Tim could have been in Goldeneye, and that would have, or Tim's third film, or whatever that might have been. I just wish Tim had carried on. And if Tim is your bag, where Tim lights your fire the way Goldeneye lights my fire with Pierce, I can see why he wouldn't like it. I can see why he'd be less enthusiastic, because you want that darker, more brooding Bond. You don't want Mr. sort of happy-go-lucky, smooth criminal kind of dude that Pierce was. So I get both sides of the argument, but for me, man, all the way, he knocks it out of the park, as our American cousins say.
Yeah, that's it. Well, there were a few people that agreed. That sort of agreed with what you just said about Tim. Owen Ling thought Bond should have been played by Tim for Goldeneye, and like you say, you can kind of, if you're a Tim lover, that's what you want, isn't it? And that's definitely true.
I mean, I can see Tim doing that pre-title sequence, man, big style. Can you imagine that whole sneaky Bond bit? I could see him doing that 100%. Yeah, he'd have to resurrect his Living Daylights outfit from the pre-titles of that. I think for that.
Yes. Yeah, totally. There are a few other people that obviously the score was mentioned a lot, as we sort of mentioned in the thing, but not everyone disliked it. There were some people that thought, there are certain cues. And some people that said because it was so unique, that's kind of a pro, really, in terms of it gives the Goldeneye thing its own distinctive flavour, so to speak.
It definitely does do that. It definitely does.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of it at all, but there is definitely, as soon as you hear a second of sound from that soundtrack, you instantly know it's Goldeneye, which, like we said before, you get that with Barry, but not so much the other composers. You know what I mean? They don't have that individuality. So it definitely does that, for sure.
Yeah. And equally, some of the soundtrack was then influence on the N64 game, which I think it worked better for the N64 game. In terms of the sort of sounds, it was kind of some of them were quite game-like, weren't they? But
100%.
So there is kind of like that positive to take from it, I suppose, which is quite good. Equally, so we had a couple of interesting people. Pierce and Tim and Halle Berry left their thoughts as well, which I thought was was rather interesting. So nice to hear from them.
We'll have to get them on the show one day, won't we? If they're calling in, I feel like they'd be open to it, wouldn't they?
Yeah, exactly. I'll get all three of them at the same time. We'll just have like a fivesome going on or something. A couple of other interesting things. Marlena said that she, after watching Goldeneye, went to the hairdressers to ask for a Natalia cut, which I thought was quite cool.
Very nice.
But definitely got to give a couple of shout outs to Jason Allentoff for attending the world premiere of Goldeneye and sitting close to Jeffrey Holder from Live and Let Die, which must have been amazing. And also to Terry Adlam. And he attended the royal premiere in the UK and sat next to Joe Robinson, who was obviously Peter Franks in Diamonds Are Forever. Imagine sitting next to him and watching the film.
Yeah.
What an experience, man. So super jealous, but a big shout out to those guys. They must have had a damn good time.
Big time. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always good. Like we always say, it's nice to give everybody else a voice, whether it's a positive, a negative, or somewhere in between, like we often say. You know, I think the very first time we did this was Spectre, wasn't it? That's when the idea of like, we should let everybody else have a little say. And that was an interesting episode to listen to. And I think, obviously, once we've got through all these films, I feel like we just need to start right back at the beginning and go through the films again. Because if you listen to like our Dr. No review, for example, it's about 20 minutes long.
Is it really? I can imagine it's super quick.
And we never did the 90-second reviews, obviously, because we hadn't thought of it back then. So yeah, I feel like we need to go back to the classics and do and pass through them again in some way, shape or form.
That will keep us going for a few more years.
Indeed it will. Yeah, indeed it will. Cool stuff. So we need to revisit our listener trivia question of the day, don't we, Chris?
We do indeed, and that was from Mr. Jack Scorer. Should we have a listen?
Let's have another little listen to that, a little reminder.
In which two James Bond movies is the quote, "Once we were like brothers"?
Okay, in which film was the quote? In which two films, sorry, "Once we were like brothers"? I think I know
You're
this.
looking confident. I think you should lead with it this time because you're looking confident.
All right. One of them is Indiana Jones's mate, and the other one is Indiana Jones's not mate. Am I barking up the right tree with that?
I think you're pretty much on it. Yeah.
Very nice. It is
Can you expand on that at all, Tommy?
Yes, it is obviously Pushkin in The Living Daylights and Christatos in For Your Eyes Only.
Yes. Well, kind of, yes. So it's said about Pushkin rather than Pushkin saying it. So it's
of course.
that says it.
Koskov that says it. Sorry. Yeah.
But about Pushkin, who's obviously Bond's mate, and then and in fact, it's also Columbo that says it about Christatos, isn't it? Or is it Christatos that says it about Columbo? Oh no, maybe
I think it's Christatos that says it about Columbo.
I think so,
yeah.
Once we were like brothers,
I can hear him saying it. At least I think it can. Yeah.
But either way, damn good question, Jack. So superb.
Well, I suppose we have to check if we got it right at the end of the day, don't we?
Oh, so actually,
should we hear from Jack
I think we
again?
better. Yeah, I think we better.
Absolutely. All right, here we go.
Hello, James Bond Radio. I have the answer for my trivia question, and the answer is in For Your Eyes Only. Christatos said it to Columbo, and in Living Daylights, General Koskov said it about him and Pushkin. Keep up the good work, and hope to see some really, really good videos. Thank you.
Very nice. Do you think we'll have some good videos? I reckon we'll have some good videos.
I really hope we got some. Well, what sort of videos is he after?
I mean, don't look on my phone for God's sake, because that's recipe for disaster.
Don't.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to look on yours either, because I feel like
it's full of bugs, isn't it?
You're indeed, indeed, and you're a single man, so I imagine there's all sorts of stuff going on over there. But yeah, I'm sure we'll on YouTube we'll probably have some good ones. Absolutely.
Yes, definitely. So keep an eye out for those, Jack, and hopefully we'll have a few more new ones in the coming months.
Indeed. Absolutely. Good stuff. All right then, Chris, you know what it's time for now, don't you?
I do indeed. It's time for
the Guest Quote Round. Bond, James Bond.
That's the constipated 007 performance. I like that. Very nice. Now, last time I changed the rules of the game, didn't I? I said I'm not doing a quote. I refuse to do one. No. I've got a different question for you, and I made it a trivia round last time. So apologies to anyone who was excited about a quote, because you're getting a trivia question instead. Now, my trivia question was: we all know, obviously, that Michael G. Wilson likes a cameo, and in Goldeneye, I would say. Most people would recognise where Michael G's cameo takes place. But there is another one. Now, I will preface this by saying this is a very sneaky question. So, I won't be too disappointed if you don't get it. But let's start proceedings by, let's say, where is the main cameo from Mickey G in Goldeneye?
So the one that I definitely know is he plays one of the Russian Security Council members when Ourumov goes to see Dmitry Mishkin. And he gets a good couple of close-ups, Mickey G, which is lovely to see. The second one, is it just a voice? Or do we actually see him?
It's not a voice.
It's not a voice. No. Do we see him?
Yeah.
Oh, you sneaky so-and-so. Right. So is it a reflection? Is it actually him? I mean, I'm clutching at straws here because I haven't got a clue. Can you give me a clue?
It's actually him. Or more accurately to say it's actually a part
his name?
Of him.
Oh, a part of him?
Yeah.
His hand?
Yes, it's his hand.
Right. So is it a close-up shot where he had to substitute a hand for like Bond or Sean Bean or something?
Absolutely. Yes, you're absolutely barking up the right tree. And I'll give you a further clue, which it happens to be Bond's hand that he is doubling.
Right. Bond's hand. Oh, flipping Nora. This is a great question, but it's tricky because you got me. Is it? Oh no, it's not a pen click, is it? No.
Nope.
Is it? Oh mate, any other clues? I don't think I should be allowed anymore.
Let's just say.
Oh, is it the laser gun from the pre-titles?
The laser gun? No.
Or the watch?
Not. Nope. Good guesses, solid guesses, but not.
I'm just trying to think where you just see his hand.
It's even sneakier than that because that's a good idea. Nope, it's not the casino. Just keep going, and we'll get there eventually. Go on, just reel him off.
No, we won't. Is it in the toilet where he punches out the dude? No, it's not.
No, it's not. I will tell you the answer is coming. Yeah. The answer is when Xenia is having it away with Admiral Chuck Farrell. And you see Bond take his little ID card out of his jacket. That is the hand of Michael G.
Shit.
Yeah.
But it's not Bond though, is it?
It is Bond, isn't it? Oh no, it's not Bond.
No, it's got to be Ourumov.
Who takes the ID card? That's a good point. It must be Sorry,
yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's Ourumov because then Xenia and Ourumov end up in the helicopter going to Seven Eye, don't they? So I always assumed it was Ourumov that took the card, and then he had been made to look like Chuck Farrell, even though he doesn't look anything like him because you never see it. But someone must have been made up to look like Chuck Farrell, but I always thought it was Ourumov who took the.
All right, let's pass that one out to the JBR family. Sorry, I threw you might have got that if I hadn't thrown you off there. That's a good point. Yeah, in my memory, that was Bond stealing the thingy, but it wasn't obviously. But yeah, let's throw that out to the family.
Went to the boat
whose
the next
hand
day, didn't he?
Do you think that is? Probably Ourumov, but if you have another take on that, then let us know. Yeah.
But either which way, that's definitely Mickey G's hand, is it?
It is Mickey G's hand, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So there you go.
Good question, man.
So you can get extra good at spotting Mickey G's cameos from now on.
Have you got any others like that? You can see his ear when he's...
I'm sure there are way more than either of us could possibly know off the top of our heads. I'm sure there's plenty of footsteps and hands and door openings and stuff that's Mickey G. Well, but nice. There we go. So have you got a quote for me this week?
Yes, I'm returning to the usual formula of actually saying a quote rather than trivia. My quote for this week is, are you ready, Tom?
I am.
It is, come on, lady, move it.
All right, yeah.
Okay. Would you like to hear that again?
Yeah, let's hear it again. I'm confident.
Okay. Come on, lady, move it.
All right. Very nice.
Looking
I'm feeling confident about that one. It's a good one. Good performance as well. I like that. Good stuff.
Cool.
All right then. So we have a listener quote from last time. This is obviously going back a couple of weeks now, which was from Rory Simpson, I believe. So should we have a little reminder of what that quote was?
Yeah, let's play it.
Yes, well, you can't lose.
Right. So, yes, well, you can't lose. Now, that to me either says it's somebody who has rigged some sort of game so they can't lose, literally, or it says to me it's somebody who is saying you can't lose because if you do, the shit's going to hit the fan. Which of those two do you think it is?
I think it's more the former than the latter.
All right, so that has
it's
narrowed
based
it down.
on someone's abilities.
So
I think it's based on someone's abilities.
Are you thinking maybe some loaded dice in Octopussy, that kind of vibe? Is that what you're thinking?
I'm thinking it might be more light-hearted than that, and I'm thinking it might be said by our main man to someone. If I'm on the right track, it is. I tell you what, can I give you a clue?
Yes.
And see if this helps. Can you say the line that Rory said, but say it in Sir Roger's voice?
Yes, well, you can't lose.
Does that trigger any memories?
I wish it did, but it doesn't.
Can I give you another huge gigantic clue?
Yeah.
This is again only if I'm on the right line. We may have interviewed the person that he was speaking to very, very, very recently.
Oh, it must be for your eyes only then.
And who could he be saying it to?
Yes, well, you can't lose.
That's why you ready?
Yeah, go on.
That's why I win the gold medal. Breath control.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Nice
so they
one.
they have that big smooch, don't they? And then Bond's like, yes, well, you can't lose.
Very nice. Okay,
Yeah.
good stuff. All right.
I
Well
think
done.
so.
Well done, you. Should we turn it over to Rory and see if you got that right?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Let's have a listen.
Hi, Chris and Tom, it's Rory from the UK with my answer to the guess the quote. The quote was, yes, well, you can't lose. Yes, well, you can't lose. That was, of course, from For Your Eyes Only, in Bond's response to BB's That's Why I Win the Gold Medal. Breath control. Hope you all got it. Probably very easy. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Now,
nice.
In my own defence there, Chris, I feel like you can't quote Sir Roger without doing the Sir Roger voice.
I know.
Do you know what I mean?
I know.
I feel like, I immediately didn't go with Sir Roger because Sir Roger doesn't talk like that, or didn't talk like that, I should say, sadly. But what do you think? Do you think that's too obvious if you did? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think if you had done it, it would have sounded definitely different. But I was thinking that because the first time when we heard it last podcast, it threw me a little bit, and I was trying to think, come on, and play it in my head. And I think if it had been Roger straight away, then it would have obviously been a lot easier. So is it a case of try and make it harder, or should these quotes be as close to the performance as they can? And I kind of prefer, even though it makes it a bit easier, I kind of prefer the performance just because it gets everyone reenacting like the accent or the voice or whatever it might be. So I think I prefer it that way,
I suppose,
even though it might perhaps make things a bit easier.
As challenging as you could make this, you could have like one word quotes and stuff, which of course we've had in the past. And I feel like, for example, you could quote Chevelli and be like, "She tastes like strawberries." You know what I mean? And then you're like, "What the fuck is that?" That sounds, you know what I mean? So I feel like, listen, I'm going to throw it out to Rory. Redo it in Roger's voice, please, just so we can. I want to hear
another one,
or another one. Redo it. I want to hear.
Okay.
At the end of the day, I want to hear, because most people would be like, "Oh, I can't do the voice." I at least want to hear Rory's Roger voice. I want to hear that performance, Rory. I hope that's all right with you, my old buddy, my old pal. But nice quote in the end, and you still got it, Chris. So kudos to you, mate.
Yes. Okay, so we have a new listener trivia this week, and it's from Mr. Stan Luca. Should we have a listen?
Let's do it.
Hello, JBR. Hello, Tom and Chris. It is Stan calling in from Surrey once again. First off, to apologise for my previous listener quote, which was just way too hard, completely impossible. So I thought I'd redeem myself and put in a new one that is somewhat attainable. So here it is. Ha! Pathetic. That is, ha! Pathetic. Bonus point if you can get the preceding line as well. Good luck.
I'm quite confident with that one. How are you feeling?
Yes, I am. I'm feeling that I may have potentially posted something on the JBR site earlier in the week, which might have related to this particular person.
All right, very nice.
Yes, I think so. But I think we're both pretty confident on this.
I think you've actually met that person as well, haven't you, in your travels? If I'm
well,
correct.
that may have been what I posted the other week.
Very nice.
You know, don't you just love it with the Facebook stuff when you get the Facebook memories that come up and it's something Bond related, and you're like, oh man, that was an awesome time, an awesome day.
It happened very recently, in recent weeks actually, when everybody was posting that, because this is like Bond season, isn't it now? The end of October into early November. And everybody was posting their Spectre premieres or their Skyfall premiere pictures and all that kind of stuff. So it's nice to get that little reminder, especially for us with the Spectre ones, because that was our first Bond premiere. I say our first because I'm hoping there's going to be more, obviously. But what about it? All right, Coolio, absolutely. Nice one, Stan. Good to hear from you. Good stuff. So next up, Chris, it is time for...
Who wrote the score for Live and Let Die? Who played Helga Brandt? How did she die? Who wants to stockpile the water in Bolivia? It's Tommy Trivia.
That's right. It's time for Tommy Trivia. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this game, this is where Chris takes out the 007 Trivial Pursuit deck and quizzes me on the questions. And usually I do all right. Sometimes there's a little beast in there, but it's usually pretty all right. So what have you got for me this week?
I'm going to start with an incredibly difficult question, Tom. Okay. So this is on casting characters. In the film Goldfinger, can you please tell me who was painted in gold?
Interesting, actually. That would obviously be Jill Masterson. Interestingly, let me just on that point. I remember Paul Jameson, God bless him, heading up JBR Melbourne down under these days, posted an article about how there was a myth about the Bond girl who did that scene dying.
I read that.
Right? And it suddenly brought a flood back to my mind of memory, where I remember always being told as a kid that not Shirley Eaton, but the girl who did it first died, and then they got Shirley Eaton in to redo the scene. And then, do you know what? I believed that for the longest time. I just, that was some people just told me that story for years, and it wasn't until I was older that I was like, hang about, wasn't there a girl that died that did that? And then I looked into it, and it just never happened.
Were you given a name of the potential?
No, there was never a name. It was just the first girl that did the Golden Girl scene died because they covered her in paint and she asphyxiated, and that was it. Game over.
See, I never heard any of those rumours when I was younger, and I read the same thing that Paul stuck up, and I was just like, man, that's really weird. I've never even.
It's funny how those things happen, isn't it? Because it's so easily, especially these days, it's so easily debunked, isn't it? There's those weird things like there's apparently a lot of people who have a distinct memory that Nelson Mandela died in the 1980s, and that's a thing. Like if you look, I think they call it the Mandela effect, where people have these clear memories, and it's the same with Dolly's braces in Moonraker.
Yeah, I was just about to say
swear
the Dolly
to
effect.
God, she had braces in Moonraker, and of course she never did. But it's weird how those false memories can get in you.
Yeah, totally, man. Totally. Yeah. Really strange, but there we are. Okay, so you got that one. On to question 2. This is the films. Who is Pam Bouvier periodically an operative for?
Periodically? An operative for?
Who does she work for?
She's the CIA, isn't she?
Yes, CIA, indeed. Right.
She's only a part-timer by the sounds of that question.
She used to fly for the army helicopters or whatever, didn't she, or something like that? I can't remember. Anyway, on to the vehicles. Can you name the ship that swallows the submarines?
The ship that follows, that would be the Leparis.
The Leparis, indeed.
Or if you read the novelisation, the Lepardus.
Oh,
there's another one for you. Yeah.
There we go. Bonus point, half mark extra there. Nice one. Okay. On to gadgets and weapons. How does Gettler die?
Gettler, he gets a nail through the eyeball.
Yes. And what, just like a hammer and nail? Or?
A nail gun.
A nail gun. Brilliant.
How do you feel about that, actually? You know how Bond gets shot with a nail gun, doesn't he? And he
rips out of the... Yeah, I quite like that bit.
Do you like that, or do you think that's a bit Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Well, it's been used in Lethal Weapon, wasn't it? When the bad guys show up at his house and they've got the nail gun and they fire through the sort of plastic sheet. So it is something that's been seen before, and it is a bit strange.
Because it's a bit too tough guy for me, I think. That. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's a nail, I have no time to bleed. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit like a sort of something that would happen in Predator or something.
I do know what you mean. Because he does kind of brush it off a little bit, doesn't he, in terms of just ripping it out and carrying on and stuff. But I guess the nail through the eye is kind of cool as well.
I do like that,
But it is something that you kind of been seen before, isn't it? But yeah, it's not bad. Okay, doing well so far. On to locations. In which city is the casino, please? I'll say that again. In which city is the casino?
I'm just gonna go with Monte Carlo or Monaco.
Oh my god! No, it's in the one in Skyfall.
that would be Macau.
Yes, indeed. It did begin with M though, so you're on the right sort of line.
Thank you.
Finally, for a clean sweep across the board on crew and behind the scenes, can you please tell me who directed Tomorrow Never Dies?
That would be Mr. Roger Spottiswoode.
Yes. 6.5 out of 6. Absolutely nailed it. Just like a nail gun, actually, Tom.
Indeed, through the eyeball. Good stuff.
Yes, the
Righty ho then, Tommy Trivia is done for this week. Next up, it is time for... It's the music cue. That's right, it's time for Guess the Music Cue. Now, this is a game where Chris sends us a little bit of musical nuggetage, and we have to work out what film it's from and what scene it's from. Now, we had one last week, so we should probably revisit that first, shouldn't we?
I think that is a cracking idea.
Let's do it.
That's such a nice piece of music.
There's
just
some
like
swagger
gets you
in there.
moving. Yeah.
I tell you what, that reminds me of a
lovely.
little bit is the swagger in This Never Happened to the Other Fella, obviously on the Majesty soundtrack, when it kicks into the Bonnie bit and it's just swinging so much, you sort of like walk like a monkey. You know what I mean? You have to swing your shoulders around. You know.
You gotta love the swagger, haven't you?
Yeah.
I think we should do a JBR meetup where everyone has a swagger song on and someone just films us all walking down the street throwing the arms about a little bit. What do you think?
I like that. Yeah, it's sort of like an interpretive dance for Bond swagger. I like that. Right.
Yes.
What film is that from? I'm not sure is the answer to that. I've got a short list.
Okay. Who's the composer?
My short list begins with David Arnold.
Right.
I'm on the right track?
Yeah, I know it is David Arnold.
Okay.
Yeah.
David Arnold. Tomorrow Never Dies?
Indeed, yeah.
Very nice. Is it White Knight?
It is not. It's a bit later in the film.
Okay, it's not White Knight. Oh, I love the Tomorrow Never Dies soundtrack.
It's so
that
good.
is such a good soundtrack.
Yeah.
What you've done is you've gone from Goldeneye, which for me is probably the worst soundtrack of the whole lot. In fact, yeah, I think it is, to one of the all-time greatest straight immediately after.
It is fantastic, isn't it?
It is
such
great.
A good track.
Yeah. Right.
So I'll give you a clue. So you know the soundtrack is kind of split into 3 parts. So the first part is classic Bond.
Yeah.
The middle part is kind of high-tech German style.
Yeah.
And then the final bit is kind of like the Far East sort of Asian sort of style music.
I'll give you that.
So what does that sound like out of the 3?
That sounds like classic Bond, for sure.
So you know it's within the first third of the film.
Right.
Now,
when you say it's a bit later than White Knight, is it a lot later or just a little bit later?
It's a lot later, but still within the first third. It's kind of at the end of the first act, I suppose, if that helps. It's light-hearted and he's meeting someone.
Shit, I haven't seen this film in a long time.
I know,
Bollocks.
it's tough, isn't it? Well, we've got it coming up soon. So.
All right, give me another hint because I'm not going to get it.
Okay, the person who he's meeting has a name badge that says Quentin Quigley on it.
Oh, it's obviously the Q scene, isn't it? Yeah, when he's picking up his rental car. Yeah.
When Q's asking about insurance. Would you like a damage waiver for your new car and all that sort of stuff? And it's just a nice cheeky little riff, but you got the classic Bond sound in as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, cracking.
Wicked. I tell you what, man, that's a great Q scene. I love their chemistry in that one. It's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Okay, next up we have a new music cue this week. Now I know you're going to get this one like even before you've had a breath. It's going to be that easy. But in terms of the scene, it might be quite tricky. So let's have a listen and see what you think of this week's music cue.
Oh, that is a beauty right there. What film is that from? I don't know, Chris. I'm going to have a little think about that and get back to you next week, I think.
I bet you are.
All right, good stuff. So we will obviously find out the answer to that next time. I'm very excited. So that about rounds out today's episode of James Bond Radio. We will be back next week with a little MI6 mailbag action. So if you haven't got your questions in yet, send them in. We pick them totally at random. I say totally at random. We pick them based on the amount of sort of like discussion we could have based on the questions. So if it's something like, who's your favourite Bond? It's kind of like, we've done that to death. So if it's like a good thought-provoking question, that's what we're looking for. So send any questions, and then we pick them from random from the pool of good ones. So send those in. Obviously, go to jamesbondradio.com, click the send voicemail button on the far right-hand side, and get them in. And we will see you next Friday. You excited, Chris?
I am excited. It was great to listen to all the listener reviews. Goldeneye done and dusted. Tomorrow Never Dies will be coming up, perhaps in the new year. We might have a few other different podcasts before now and then. But yeah, MI6 mailbag, cracking. Can't wait.
Good stuff. Okay then, until then, I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright. And we'll see you next week. Take care, everyone. Bye!